Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am the host. Apologies for the late start. Had a little issue with some Xfinity Wi-Fi, but here we are, better late than never. And so this is our first time recording with 5 members of the Guilty as Charged podcast. So we have to start with the newest member of the podcast, Kyle. Kyle, thanks for joining us today, man. How are you doing?
Doing great, Steven. Had a late night hockey game last night, so I'm still waking up, sipping my coffee, but hanging in there.
There we go. I've got to say this is the first time that you and I are recording together, and I've got to say, man, I respect the commitment to the bolo tie. I think it looks great on your setup there. So happy to have you here, man.
Until I can grow hair as long and luscious as Herbert, I got to rock with the quarterback that I started with. So keep this going for now.
There we go. I respect it. Arjun is here as well, man. Arjun, how you doing?
Doing good. I kind of was out doing something during the schedule release, so it was cool to go back and watch the podcast during then. And I thought you guys did a good job of breaking everything down. I wanted to see Alex on there because I know Sixers lost that night, but that one picture Tyler put of Alex, I thought that was top tier. So
yeah, it's all good. Unfortunately, the Sixers did lose, and I've got to be completely honest. I don't fully understand the SpongeBob reference. SpongeBob's not my forte, but Tyler did a great job there, and with everything. Oh, you already got the slideshow coming up.
I'm sorry. What's that? You wanted me to bring it up again? I'm sorry. Was that what I was hearing? So SpongeBob is trying to convince everyone that there is a Christmas, and they don't know who Santa Claus is. So basically, Santa Claus does not arrive on Christmas Eve, and then Squidward takes a picture of him like this, and with all the jellyfish being the Christmas lights. So Santa does not arrive at this picture, and that's the reference, I guess. There just happened to be 4 little jars for 4 little L's, and I had to put that because we're Chargers fans. So there we go. There's the reference.
There we go. Well done, Tyler. And Alex catching strays when he's not on here. But Alex, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. I don't know why we are talking about basketball on a Chargers podcast. You guys are going off course with the subject matter. Now, without any further ado, we will do top 5 breakfast burritos today at some point in the last 30 minutes.
All right. We're looking forward to it. I really quickly going back to the schedule. I apparently that the Chinese that's on the Cleveland slideshow translates to something like Cleveland is boring or something like that, which I learned after we recorded. So I hope that's true, because if it is, that's amazing.
I think it's Japanese.
Japanese, or I'm sorry. Yeah, Japanese, not Chinese.
Come on, Steve.
Different things. Sorry. I never watched any anime in my life, so
roasted my ass, and he's trying to get us canceled on the first.
No, I'm your buffer for that. You can make whatever you want.
That's true.
Tyler said it was fine.
Yeah, but obviously the Chargers did fantastic there. So I think it's up to 5 million views right now on Twitter, which is great to see. They deserve it. Obviously, they won a Webby, so it is what it is. It is Kyle's birthday tomorrow. I didn't know that. Happy early birthday, Kyle.
Happy birthday, Kyle.
Thanks, guys. Wife and I are going to stay the night at Disneyland. So we're going to hang out at the hotel tomorrow and then attack it hard Monday. Going to hopefully get on Rise of the Resistance for the first time. So that's the ride, right? Yeah, the new one.
Yeah.
So very excited.
I'm actually wearing a Star Wars shirt today, so that's funny.
Nice.
Rise of the Resistance is incredible, man. It truly is a true spectacle, and they did a fantastic job. So yeah, I wish you a good early birthday. So as always, we are here for a Q&A. I see a couple of good questions in the chat. If you want to make sure that we get to your question, please feel free to use the super chat feature, and we will kind of just bounce around and see what we got. So first question that I saw here today, where'd it go? There it is. All right. Musari wants to know, is Sawyer starting guard next to Filer at right tackle? So obviously the Chargers began rookie minicamp yesterday. Jamari Sawyer had some great quotes, man. I think he's got an electric personality. Pictured starting in minicamp, of course. And, there's not even Slater's not there. Corey Linsley's not there. He was working at left guard yesterday, and Zion Johnson working at right guard. So again, it's extremely early in the process, but it does seem like they are pretty committed to starting Jamari Salyer on his journey at guard. Tyler, what's up, man?
Don't worry about it.
Did I lose you, or did you lose us?
I just don't even worry about it. It's a long story. It's all good.
All right, sounds good. So, Kyle, we'll start with you here. What do you make of the offensive line shifting? Do you expect Jamari Salyer to start this season? And if so, where would you expect him to start?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this one a lot, and I have a quick question for you guys because I don't know if I imagined this or not, but haven't multiple players and the coach Staley come out and said that a part of the reason why they thought the ball wasn't getting downfield enough was because of an offensive line struggle and not necessarily the receivers? Did I imagine that?
Arjun?
No. Yeah, no. I believe Staley said that at his combine press conference. I know people at PFF referenced it on their NFL draft show, so that's where I heard it. And obviously I do trust their opinion, and I'm not going to say they were lying about what Staley said. So I think it is a factual statement.
So if that's true, and I thought I heard that a player had said that post-draft, I just kind of believe that they think that the solution's already on the roster for right tackle, because that's a very bold thing to say. Hey, there was no real problem with the offensive line last season except the right tackle spot. And now we're kind of throwing it under the bus a little bit while we're still going to trot out the same guy to start. And I have a hard time believing, did Trey Pipkins beat out Storm Norton for that starting spot between, the end of the season and now? Because it seems like an assumption that he's going to take over, but he hasn't won a camp battle since he came onto our team. So I don't know how that assumptions already are being made. So I think there's a good chance that Filer does end up starting. And like you guys said, the double rookie guard situation is very possible, but that's just my guess at this point.
Yeah, I've talked a little bit about this, and I feel confident that it's not going to be Storm Norton. I feel like if they viewed him as a starting player, they would have signed him to a multi-year deal, and of course they could certainly still do that. But everything that we know about Brandon Staley and this regime is that they really value low pressure numbers and high pass blocking efficiency ratings, and that is not Storm Norton, as we clearly saw last season. So I feel like it is going to be Matt Filer. I think Trey Pipkins has kind of an outside shot to be that guy. And I just think that just makes the most sense. And then they went and drafted 2 guards as opposed to drafting a potential challenger for right tackle outright. So, I think we'll see Zion start at right guard, and then we'll see a competition at left guard between Salyer and Hymas. And then you roll with Matt Filer at right tackle. But like I said, I do think Trey Pipkins does have kind of an outside shot to be that guy.
Steven, why do you? I know that a lot of people are believing that Zion's going to start on the right, but he was on the left last year, right?
Yeah.
Why are we thinking he's going to be a better fit on the right hand side?
I don't think that. I think it would make most sense to just kind of slot him right into the position that he played. He said yesterday that he really has only played on the right side at Davidson, where he played right guard at Davidson. Where Tyler shared that video of him spinning out on an option read, which is just freaking insane to watch that kind of athleticism. But at Boston College, he played left guard and left tackle. At the Senior Bowl, it was mostly left guard and center. So Tom Telesco did say, as Frank points out, that they think that he would slide in at right guard. Again, that was before they drafted Jamari Salyer, and they had the intention of, supposedly having the intention of keeping Matt Filer at left guard. So to me, if you're kicking Matt Filer out, Zion should just go back to playing his natural position at left guard.
It's so hard to gauge, before Salyer gets picked, Filer is a guest staying at left guard. Then you get Salyer, and it's like, okay, well, that's the really good guard, so he could be a guard. But then why would that have changed their plans? And they said after they drafted Zion that they make him a right guard, which means Filer's left guard. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the Chiefs. Do any of you guys remember what the Chiefs' intentions were last year before they landed Trey Smith way late in the draft? What was their plan on the interior at tackle or whatever? I guess there was no tackle plans involved with all that, but at least they made some changes on the fly. Hopefully there's something like that for the Chargers too, but I don't even know.
Yeah, so the Chiefs, they signed Joe Tooney to a big contract, right? And then it seemed like they obviously had the clear plan to take a center early. Unfortunately, landed Creed Humphrey, which I will always be mad about. And then they had, a couple of mid-tier veterans that were going to battle for right guard. Like I think they signed Kyle Long and some other pieces. And then Trey Smith just happened to be freaking amazing, which like weird. Who could have seen that coming? So that was kind of their plan, but I don't know. We'll have to see where the Chargers shake out. So we'll get to our first super chat, courtesy of Frank Blakely. Excuse me. He said pre-draft the consensus was edge had the lowest depth on the roster, besides clearly right tackle. What do you all believe is now our least deep position group? Alex, we'll start with you here. What do you think? What position group kind of concerns you the most in terms of the depth outside of right tackle?
If we're going outside of right tackle, I think you probably have to look at defense and go to this safety group, like at this point, because I mean, if Derwin James goes down, I mean, I like JT Woods and Nasir Adderley, but like they're kind of boned there. For lack of a better term, I think if you look at the defensive line, edge is, they have boosted that with Kyle Van Noy. But there is still a scenario where if either Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa goes down, you do still have to play like Chris Rumph pretty significant snaps. So I would say it's probably the first and then the first level of the defense, and then also probably looking at the safety room. Corner, they're pretty deep now at this point, and they drafted running back, which was kind of the problem before. So I don't think that they have many depth issues on offense at this point. So I think you're probably looking at some of the key defensive groups.
Arjun, what do you think here?
I think I would. I don't know. I think I would go. Honestly, I think they did a pretty good job after the draft, filling out corner and edge, which would have been my picks. So honestly, I think they could use one more receiver. And it doesn't even have to be a speed guy. I think you have Guyton and DeAndre Carter for that role. I think they I don't know if Keenan Allen or Mike Williams gets hurt. I think Josh Palmer. I don't even know if he's still in that wide receiver 3A or 3B. But you'd have Palmer and Guyton playing significant snaps, and I think that's not the greatest thing in the world. So I think they could add another receiver, but I'm not sure. Kind of like Jarvis Landry is one of the last good free agent receivers still there, so that would kind of be my direction.
Didn't Landry just sign with the Saints?
Yeah, he was one of the last
okay,
good ones left.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Some people are saying wide receiver in the group, and I guess that sort of makes sense. But I guess your two main starters drop off, then I guess there is concern there. Linebacker feels like the easy one. I guess even running back can sort of be that because we have no idea who the RB3 is, but that's not the worst thing. I mean, edge, not really. I think I'm trying to look at the depth chart that we wrote out for the Chargers. I do still think outside corner is a bit of a concern. Let me check the depth chart real quick. Because, I mean, obviously we have the two guys that we really like on the outside. Davis can start on the outside, but after that, is it Devon Campbell who might lose his spot to Dean Leonard? And Dean Leonard's a guy who's played one full season of college ball and got kind of toasted. Outside corner is a bit of a problem right now because we're still the same number of injuries away from Devon Campbell starting at outside corner. And Devon Campbell as a depth guy is not that bad, but it's concerning that you have Devon Campbell who might even lose his job to Dean Leonard, and Dean Leonard, who I think was ranked 522nd on the consensus board and isn't that great. So it's a little concerning there.
Yeah, the back end of the cornerback roster, I think, is a bit of a concern. I mean, obviously linebacker to me is kind of the big concern right now, just because I think we have Drew Tranquil, who's a really high quality starter who can't stay healthy, and then a bunch of question marks for me. I think Troy Reeder is fine as your fourth linebacker. Brandon Staley kind of talked about him on the Rich Eisen show as if he were going to start, which kind of made me really concerned. Obviously, Kenneth Murray can't stay healthy. We heard before all of the offseason stuff that they liked Eamon Ogbongbemiga, and then they signed Troy Reeder. So we'll see. What linebacker still has a lot of question marks for me. So that's kind of where I would go. If someone said tight end, I would understand that, because Donald Parham is still kind of a question mark. We heard that he's fully cleared medically. By we, I mean everybody. Like that was, kind of common knowledge. Trey McKitty had like 2 or 3 catches last year. So I would understand somebody saying tight end, but I think for me, it would be linebacker.
Yeah, no, I think you would have to kind of go linebacker as well, specifically because they also didn't add anything. I mean, really, during the draft, they didn't use a draft pick. They just got the one undrafted free agent from Rutgers, and that's their 6th linebacker right now. And so at this point, if Staley's seriously talking about Troy Reader playing significant snaps, we have problems in that room as a whole. And then, I mean, the big question is Kenneth Murray. If Kenneth Murray actually bounces back and has that kind of season that, we sort of were expecting when he was drafted, then the linebacker room looks a lot more deep. If he plays, and is injured a lot more often, like 2021 Kenneth Murray, then that group is headed for a disaster no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to a good question here from Jacob, kind of, adding on to this. He wants to know if we think Jalen Guyton could have a breakout season and get a 3rd contract with the team. So we've, ever since Kyle has come on the show, we've talked a lot about comp picks. And so I feel like this is kind of the perfect spot for him to jump in here. I guess we would have to quantify what would a breakout season look like for Jalen Guyton and then kind of gauge his value on the open market. But Kyle, what do you make of Jalen Guyton's prospects this year?
Yeah, so we have another video that's going to be coming out soon where we go over kind of my projections for next year and how the offseason and this last round of free agency is going to affect our comp formula for the next cancellation chart, and trying to guess what these guys like Guyton who are in a contract year might be earning in free agency. And I think you can look at the comps for Guyton and see the potential of him having a little bit of a breakout season and getting in that range of with him being a fast receiver who, yes, he has a more limited route tree, but with the speed that he has, if he breaks out and has a 700 or 800 yard season, which is only 200 more than what he's kind of averaging right now, and 6 or 7 touchdowns, he might be in the $10 million range with how crazy the market is. And if that's the case, then, here's your walking papers. You've been a great Charger for us. Thank you for getting us a 5th round pick next year. So that's kind of my thought. I don't think I would be very shocked if we re-signed him, because I really think he's going to at least get 5 or 6 just based on his speed and getting exposure on an explosive offense. But I think there's a chance that he breaks out for a decent contract, kind of like a Tyrell Williams, who I think at the time signed for $10 million a year, but he was a little bit more of a complete player. But times have changed and wide receivers markets have gone through the roof. So I think $10 million might be where he lands.
It really has, the wide receiver market obviously taking off this year. So I know Jalen Guyton catches a lot of flack on Twitter. I happen to think he did show a lot of improvement last year as a route runner, relative to, him being an undrafted free agent, a guy that they basically have for free on the roster. But, if they really do think, that the offensive line was the problem in terms of accessing the deep part of the field, then Jalen Guyton certainly could have, 3 or 4 more deep passes this year. And, if he gets 3 or 4 more deep passes this year, like Kyle's saying, that's, 200, 300 extra more yards and, a couple more touchdowns. So I don't know if I would full on say breakout season if that's the case, because to me, for him to have a true breakout season, I feel like that would take, an injury to Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, an extensive one, where then Guyton is more involved, like we saw kind of in the back half of 2020, where he's getting, 6, 7 targets as opposed to 3 or 4 per game. So I think he'll be better this year. I don't know if I would qualify it as a breakout season.
Yeah. I mean, as far as a breakout season, I think it's possible. Like Steven said, the margin between what is a good Guyton season and what is a breakout season is so slim. It could be 3 or 4 50-yard passes from Justin Herbert, right? So if that is kind of what we're quantifying it as, then yeah, I mean, it's very possible that Jalen Guyton could be a 500, 600-yard receiver in theory.
Sure.
For me, there's just a lot of ball distribution to kind of go around on this offense. When we talk about Eckler, now Spiller's also going to be kind of catching balls out of the backfield. Obviously, you have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. We still are kind of wondering, what Josh Palmer's, full role in this offense is going to be in year 2, plus Gerald Everett, plus Donald Parham. I think it's very possible, but for me, there's just like a lot of mouths to feed kind of on this offense. And so I think Guyton sort of falls into that category of like maybe, but yeah, I think he could have a breakout season, but he's definitely not getting a third contract with this team. I mean, like Kyle said, it just makes too much sense to kind of let him walk. Obviously, if he doesn't have the breakout season, then you could kind of talk about like a way to bring him back. But I think speed is very much valued now,
Sure.
Even for someone who has a limited route tree like Guyton. If he can run a 4.3, then, let's sign him and worry about the rest later, right? So I think that's going to be valued. So I think he's probably, going to walk regardless of which season he has.
Yeah, I do agree that he doesn't get a new contract with the Chargers, unfortunately. I'm sure Arjun is already doing mental numbers and calculations in his head or on paper or whatever. Obviously, shout out my mom for sending in the super chat. Look at this GAC team. 5 out of 6 of us, not bad. I promise there's a girl in here. We just couldn't get her on today. We're not. Anyway, as far as Guyton, on the one hand, sure, the last 5 games of the year, I think he had like 250 yards and all 3 of his touchdowns thanks to the GAC bump. And so if he wants to come on and interview again, he can totally have another breakout season, mostly because of us. But at the same time, they did like some of their – okay, so if the offensive line is fixed, there's more downfield shots. So maybe Guyton has more opportunities. That's great. On the other hand, they did get DeAndre Carter. They did sign Gerald Everett. Those 2 guys can attack downfield. And I think that's also going to take away. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like he could have this almost the same season, just slightly better. Like you said, I don't think there's really a breakout season on the horizon, but I could see him getting his, 500 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns sort of deal. But we'll see what kind of offense this becomes because they obviously didn't go get speed. They got more, even though these guys could work downfield, Gerald Everett's more possession, yak sort of guy, Isaiah Spiller running the ball more. So they might even just throw it less. So I could see him having more stats. I think he'll have more stats this year, but I don't think it'll ever be a breakout season.
Yeah, and I think it's just also kind of a low floor, high ceiling situation, right? Like, because you kind of know where Keenan Allen, if he plays all 17 games, is going to finish in that 900 to 1,100 yard range, right? You kind of know the same is true for Mike Williams a little bit. He's going to finish somewhere between 800 and 1,000 yards like he usually does. Guyton, like I said, depending on how many deep passes they get, depending on the state of the offensive line, could wind up anywhere between like 300 yards, or he could wind up somehow at like 550, 600, right? So I think that's kind of what you're trying to calculate for. And that just depends on so many other factors.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do a full, stat breakdown and prediction episode once we get a little bit more intel about how the offense and roles are going to be distributed. So wanted to get to Sean's super chat question. He says, looking at the schedule, it looks like the first half is the easier portion. How important is it for us to win these favorited matchups this season? So, Arjun, I know you kind of talked about this on Twitter about how important the Mahomes game would be in potentially beating the Chiefs and things like that. What do you make of the opening schedule for the Chargers?
Yeah, so what I said was we have 7 games before the bye. The worst we should be is 4-3. So, like, you have to take care of business against Seahawks, Jags, and Texans. I talked about it on Twitter, like, Mahomes in September, Mahomes and Andy Reid in general are just like Thanos in September. Like, they're statistically, like, one of the best, like, offenses ever in the first month because they've put in all of this new all of their new plays and concepts during offseason, and they're just unleashing hell on the NFL in the first 4 weeks. So playing them week 2 obviously isn't a great break. I've talked about it last season. Like, I don't think the Chargers did that great against the Chiefs defensively. They just got lucky with 2 forced fumbles and a tipped pick and one random Mahomes pick where he just threw it up in the air to end the game. So, the Chiefs were moving the ball pretty much at will against the Chargers in week 3 last year. So, it's gonna be tough in week 2, especially on Thursday Night Football. Quick turnaround from what's probably going to be a very tough divisional game in week 1. traditionally the Raiders have started really, really well under John Gruden with Derek Carr, right? Like they're always starting 4-2, 5-2, then they taper off, even though this season they pulled it together. Week 1, they always seem to have this like weird win, like where like they're not favored. Like last year, there's the Ravens where they weren't favored, and Ravens still, they beat the Ravens. So week 1 is not a gimme either. But new system, new defensive and offensive system. I'll take my chances against the Raiders. So I think out of the 4 tough games, I mean, I think they can win 2 of them, which 5-2 at the bye week would be great. But I think 4-3 is the worst they can be. And again, they have to take care of business versus the Jags, the Texans, and the Seahawks.
Yeah, you cannot lose to any of those bad teams in the early part of the schedule because, we talked about those last 9 games, just how difficult they are. It is really going to be interesting to see because the Raiders and the Chiefs both have a ton of turnover, and specifically the Chiefs on offense, right? You have these 3 new receivers that are potentially going to be, leading their offense. I know they still have Mecole Hardman and obviously Travis Kelce, but, they're taking the replace Tyreek Hill with 3 different players kind of approach, and it's just going to be interesting to see how they integrate all of those pieces. So Kyle, what do you make of, let me remove Sean's question here so we can see your face. Kyle, what do you make of the early portion of the Chargers schedule here?
I like playing the Raiders in week 1 because you never know if Josh McDaniels is just going to fly back to New England and call it quits again, like he did with the Colts. So that's kind of fun and exciting. I guess they're still trying to figure out who's going to call plays for the Patriots on offense. So who knows? But yeah, apparently they have their that's wild. Patricia and Joe Judge apparently are like taking turns calling plays. I don't know, but I like it. I like a little bit of adversity late, personally. Even though it's really like kind of the middle of our schedule that gets the hairiest. It seems like it depends on how the Broncos come out and do. I mean, no matter what, we have a tough schedule because of our division, and I love that. This division might have a division winner that comes out with 10 or 11 wins because there might be so many wins or games lost and won going back and forth. We might see everybody in the division just go 3-3 or 4-2 against each other. So that makes it really interesting to me. I think iron's going to sharpen iron, and I think we might have 2 or 3 really good divisional opponents entering into the playoffs, a lot more hardened than a lot of other teams are. So I think attrition and not getting injured is going to be huge for us. But overall, I'm just pumped on the schedule because of the video we got with it. So that's kind of how I feel.
Right. I mean, I think it's very important, like Arjun said, to be at minimum 4-3. You would hope to kind of be 6-1, assuming that means you go 2-1 in the division and then win the gimme games. But I think that if you're 4-3, that's not bad. If you're 5-2, that's kind of better. I mean, the elephant in the room is what happens with that Cleveland game, because the Browns don't really know what's going on with that. As the Chargers social media team pointed out, our lawyers advised us not to talk about it. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, I do kind of think that there's this element to the schedule release where it's like, we don't know what these teams are going to be 3 months from now or 4 months from now at the same time. I remember we did the schedule release show last year and we were like, oh, after the Chargers bye, they play the no Brady Patriots, they play the Eagles, they stink, they play the Steelers, they play the Vikings. And then they kind of went 2-2 in that stretch, in what should have, what people thought was a 3-1 or 4-0 stretch too. Not saying that's going to really happen with the Texans or the Jags. I don't see those teams turning it around this year or making it the year. But you kind of never know what's going to happen with some of these games. And so, basing win percentage or strength of schedule off of what happened last year can always be a little bit dicey. But I definitely think it's important to get those wins in the first half, like Arjun said. And then to me, the most brutal part of their schedule is that November 13th and December 4th with 2 games, 3 road games, 2 games against the Chiefs and the Raiders. And then, obviously going on the road to in primetime against the Niners and also the Cardinals. Like, to me, that's easily the hardest part of their schedule. If you can go 2-2 in that stretch, or better 3-1, if you can at least kind of stabilize the ship there, that's like, I think that can kind of run you through to the end of the season at least. But yeah,
that 4-game stretch is the one I was most concerned about. But yeah, that Browns game to me is super important. If we're talking about winning early matchups, you look at the schedule, and Buffalo plays them week 11. Cincinnati, obviously their division rivals, but Cincinnati and Baltimore play them twice after we play them. The Patriots play them in week 6. It really just depends on when Watson comes back, and if he has a 6-game suspension, or maybe it's just after the bye week. There's Miami, there's Buffalo, obviously the Bengals and the Ravens, Pittsburgh. Like, those guys are going to be competing for that final bubble spot. I'm not saying the Chargers will be competing for a bubble spot, but I've seen this song and dance before, and it's very possible. That's very important. Like, that's a huge game. Beating them and getting that tiebreaker, beating them without Deshaun Watson, without Baker Mayfield, and then letting other teams try to battle it out with Deshaun Watson on the actual roster. Again, I don't know what his suspension is going to be, but getting them early is huge for us.
Yeah, and I also just think talking about like certainty in terms of those early matchups as well. Like, this is the part where we kind of like know the most about these teams. We have the fewest injuries at this point. Nick points out in the chat, like, yeah, there's no such thing as a gimme game for the Chargers because they lost to Houston last year, and they've had embarrassing losses in games they should have won before. But like, that's why it's important that you're getting Houston in week 4, the Jags in week 3, because you don't want to play them when you're down 10 guys because of injury, and then, or like last year against Houston, 20 guys on the COVID list, right? So obviously we don't expect that to happen this year, but to me, getting these matchups in the earlier half is just about reducing uncertainty and kind of taking and capitalizing on those chances as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talked a lot about last year throughout the season was kind of capitalizing on what was going on with the Chiefs and their slow start. And I think we could have a similar conversation again this year, because the Chiefs' first 8 games are absolutely brutal. They get the Buccaneers, the Colts, us, and a bunch of other really good teams. I think Adam Schefter pointed out that they're the first team ever to have like 6 playoff teams from the previous season in their first 8 games. So it's going to be really crucial for this Chargers team to start out hot and continue that momentum, throughout the back half of the schedule, which is significantly harder. So we'll get to another question that I liked here from the Snake Sports Talk Show. He asked, with the acquisitions of Bryce Callahan and J.C. Jackson in the secondary, will we expect big jumps from J.T. Wood, Asante Samuel Jr., and Nasir Adderley, and what style of play impacts them more with these vets? So we'll talk about rookie, expectations in one of the next few episodes here. So we'll take JT Woods out of this conversation. But Tyler, what do you make of how adding JC Jackson and Bryce Callahan kind of helps Asante Samuel Jr. in his second season?
I hope it just gives everyone, not that they can't play multiple spots, but I hope just everyone has a defined role. And oh wow, we are. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
How you doing?
That's too much of me. Who's hitting the button?
Sorry, I was trying to get the one where we're a little bit more balanced, but
oh yeah, I got you.
There we go.
No, I mean, it should be, I think, big for him. I guess we're assuming he's playing outside. I guess his role is the least defined. I'm talking about defined roles. But listen, I think even if they didn't add anybody, that Asante Samuel Jr. would have a better season, just regardless, because he was pretty talented and he was pretty good, I think, for a rookie when he was on the field. But just the concussion's so rough for him. Hopefully this stability and knowing, again, year 2, always the year 2 sort of thing, is a good enough jump for him. I want to go back and watch more of him. I couldn't say if he improved during the season or not, because it was so in and out of the lineup. At one point, he was benched during the Cleveland game for Devon Campbell, which is crazy to say, because Campbell might not even make the roster. But listen, I think regardless of whether these guys were added or not, I think Samuel Jr. will have a better year. And I think even going into training camp last year, they weren't really sure what they were doing with him, because they maybe put him in the slot and they put him on the outside. Like, he was behind Brandon Faison for most of training camp. So I think now going into it, I assume as you're defined either outside starter, I think outside starter, or your slot corner, he at least has a defined role. He knows what he's doing, and I think he'll just improve because of that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, there will be natural improvement here from Asante Samuel Jr., especially if he's able to stay healthy. But, he was one of the ones that talked last week about, just being more familiar with the scheme and the verbiage and being able to kind of just take that mentally. And then the thing with JC Jackson, right? They're saying that JC is going to shadow the number 1 receiver of every single team. And that's going to take a lot of pressure off Asante, off of Michael Davis, off of Bryce Callahan, and allow those guys to play free. Not going to have to about covering Devontae Adams, because that's going to be JC you're gonna have to worry about, covering. I guess Cortland Sutton would be the number one. So Judy or somebody else. So it's going to be a big help for them as long as they stay healthy. And we've been talking about big jump for Nasir Adderley for 3 years now. If he's able to do more this year, I'll be very happy. But I think he's ultimately kind of a solid player regardless. So we'll get to a couple more questions here at a pace. Wanted to point this one out specifically. Arjun, of course. Did I read that Bryce contract correctly? He pretty much can be waived, injured without a huge chunk of his contract. And he guaranteed to get, I don't know if he's guaranteed to get hurt, especially not being a starter. But yeah. Aaron Wilson did point out that he had an injury.
Steven, we're losing you a bit here on the.
Yeah, I agree, Steven. So,
yeah. Arjun, just go ahead and talk about the contract if you want, and then.
Steven, okay, well, I have to pull it up. I did not read, about any.
It's it's a 152,000 guaranteed, right? Something like that.
Yeah, so I mean it is like a minimum or vet minimum contract. So
and it's one of those.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
And the cap hit's actually lower than what he's getting paid as one of those veteran incentives, which was cool, right? He's getting paid like 1.2.
Yeah.
But to the cap, it's only like 1.035 or something like that. Just throwing numbers out, but it's kind of cool. He got a little savings there.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how that works. I think I'd have to read over like the details, but if it is like an injury settlement, then yeah, I mean they could cut him, but he would still get paid, and I don't think the Chargers would lose too much against the cap. I wanted to bring up a point about the other question. If Asante gets hurt and we roll out a cornerback lineup of Michael Davis, J.C. Jackson, and Callahan, do you know what they all have in common?
Wait, hold on. This sounds fun. So, what was the question? Michael Davis, J.C. Jackson.
Yeah, Michael Davis, J.C. and Callahan. If that's the starting cornerback group, what do they all have in common?
Is this an on-field thing?
No.
Oh, they're all undrafted.
Yeah. So
okay.
It would kind of just go with what Tom Telesco's done, which is like punt cornerbacks and just bring in undrafted guys with long arms and that are fast and let Ron Miles develop them. But yeah, I think that would be pretty interesting. I'm not sure if that's ever been done. 3 undrafted players starting. Obviously, we want the best players health on the field, so I obviously wishing Asante good health, and obviously he had a lot of scary health problems last year. So, I'm not wishing on injury on anyone. And to this guy's question, like no injuries guaranteed. Injuries are very random for most of the time, even if for a guy like Callahan. So, Callahan should be an upgrade over Davis, in my opinion, and we get the best cornerbacks out there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that Bryce Callahan kind of went for the price point that he did, right? Like we've kind of brought up with injuries, but it's a new season and who knows what's going to happen, right? So, I mean, for the Chargers to get him at the value that they get him at, we were kind of talking about the concept of like a Jalen Guyton breakout season. If Bryce Callahan were to kind of have like a breakout season where he stays healthy and then leaves to another team for some kind of comp pick, like that's probably what the Chargers are sort of like going for. But it's very low risk, high reward in general, in my opinion.
Yeah, hopefully my internet's good now again. I don't know what's going on today.
Yeah, you sound fine.
I haven't had any issues until this morning, so that's fantastic. Yeah, I think you're signing Bryce Callahan to be that 4th corner and potentially, challenge Michael Davis for that 3rd corner spot. And then, so that's kind of the big difference, right? Like obviously the Broncos wish that he would have stayed healthy. They signed him to a big contract to be their 2nd or 3rd corner. So it's just kind of about managing expectations there. But I think Bryce Callahan as your 4th corner, even if he gets hurt and misses 5-6 games, like I think you're okay there. You're not signing him to be a starter. Whereas with Chris Harris, you're signing him to be your 2nd corner, and then if he gets hurt, you're just kind of screwed. So that's kind of the difference here. So I wanted to get to Todd's question. I think this is a really interesting one because he says that Brandon Staley hasn't really mentioned Joey Bosa with reverence of the other elite players on the team. Van Hagelin, I assume that's Kyle Van Noy, maybe gets Joey's hand in the dirt more this year. So This is an interesting question, Tyler. I don't know if you wanted to take a stab at this one first, but what do you think about Todd's question here?
And regarding just not mentioning him, because a couple people have pointed this out too. I'm fairly confident Brandon Staley thinks Joey Bosa is an elite player. I don't worry about that. I just think he talks about the additions of a J.C. Jackson, and he talks about weaponizing Derwin James and adding the Khalil Mack. He might think Khalil Mack is better than Joey Bosa, and that wouldn't surprise me. But I don't think he doesn't think Joey Bosa is not elite. But in terms of getting his hand in the dirt more, sure. Yeah, I think absolutely. I think you can actually reduce him inside and let Van Noy rush from the outside. I think that's completely the plan. They tried to do that last year. They tried to lean into it more the second half of the year, but they just really couldn't find the right guy. I mean, you reduced Bosa inside, and it was, Kyler Fackrell, who barely played in the second half of the year, or Chris Rumpf, who had 4 pressures, or Emeka, or Kenneth Murray, obviously. Like, they tried to make that work, and they just couldn't. Now they have a guy who can actually rush from the outside and let Joey Bosa work inside. So, yeah, I think that'll absolutely happen.
Yeah, I just think it's a situation where, I mean, Brandon Staley also kind of like doesn't have to say it. Like, there's never, while Brandon Staley's been here, obviously, Joey Bosa was paid the year before. So, like, there's nothing to kind of say. They pay him almost $30 million per year at edge. Like, I think they value Joey Bosa. There's no upcoming contract situation to talk about with him. There's no, we just drafted this guy. We just signed this guy. Like, I think he's just kind of an assumed quantity at this point. So I think no one's really asking him a lot about Joey Bosa in the same way that, for example, this offseason, they ask about Khalil Mack, right, in the media and his addition to the team.
Yeah, as we all know, he loves Khalil Mack. So he did that interview with Chris Harry on CBS, and I thought it was interesting the way he kind of framed the two players of Mack and Bosa. And so I think he thinks that Khalil Mack is better than Joey Bosa, and I think that's, he has a stronger relationship there maybe as his former position coach. So if he thinks that, then I think that's fair. But there's no way that he doesn't think that Joey is an elite player. As for the second part of this question, like, I think the possibilities with Kyle Van Noy are just significantly greater than what they had with Kyler Fackrell and Chris Rumpf and those guys. So if they want to put Joey over guards more often, we saw him you kind of feast in that regard. And if that's the case, I think that's fine. But Joey can play anywhere and do anything. I feel like he gained more confidence in the 2-point stance down the stretch. I feel like he talked about that several times, and I'm excited to see what this year has for him. So, interesting question. Next, I wanted to get to from Jarrett Tracy. How do you think the draft would have shaped out had they not re-signed Mike Williams? Would you be confident going into the season with KA13, Palmer, Guyton, and a rookie? So, Kyle, we'll get your thoughts here first. In the alternate reality where Mike Williams is not a Charger, how do you think that affects the draft?
I think maybe Alex and I would have had our wishes come true when we were sitting there waiting for a Calvin Austin or Burton pick.
Yep.
I don't think it would have had to have been a first-round pick. I think we made the right call there, unless, trade down action. But overall, I don't think we would have gone in too early, but we really thought that Calvin Austin might have been a possibility, or Bo Melton, and I just think they would have pulled the trigger at some point.
I just want to say that the entire league is going to regret letting Bo Melton fall to the 6th round. I had to get that out there. But no, I think that I kind of think that they might have taken a 1st-round receiver had they let Mike Williams walk. I'm not certain how that would have played out, but I mean, just how they value that position in general, and they've showed you that with the contracts they've given Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, how much they value that position. So I tend to think that they might have gone with basically whoever was kind of on the board there at that point. Who were all the wide receivers? I mean, it was
Christian Watson,
Treylon Burks. So that might have been a situation where they traded down and maybe taken a receiver. Or just waited, because they didn't have a round 2 pick to wait for a receiver. So I think that would have been a trade down scenario had they kind of let Mike Williams walk. Or wait, did they? No, Khalil Mack happened before Mike Williams was re-signed, right?
I would. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Like 2 days before. Yeah.
Right. So technically, but they still wouldn't have had that 2nd-round pick to play around with. So it's not like the Khalil Mack trade wouldn't have happened. I would have been comfortable with it because ultimately you have Justin Herbert. If you don't even have a 1st-round receiver or maybe even a second round receiver, like it would have worked. But I think the way that everything played out, still having Mike Williams and still getting to develop Palmer and Guyton into what they can be, like I think that's ultimately what they wanted.
Yeah, I think if they had opted to not re-sign Mike Williams, or if he had opted to take, reportedly a huge number from Jacksonville, maybe he was kind of their initial target instead of Christian Kirk. We don't know. But I think in that world, you're probably adding a veteran as well. It's some kind of mid-tier veteran to kind of stabilize the group a little bit. So I don't think necessarily that, you'd roll into the season with Allen, Palmer, Guyton, and let's say Bo Melton in the third round as like your 4 main receivers. I think you would have a veteran presence in there as well. But they definitely would have taken a receiver in the draft at some point.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they might have done what the Titans did by trading A.J. Brown and then going to get Treylon Burks, if they kind of would have done something similar like that by letting Mike Williams walk and replacing him with like a Treylon Burks type player. I think that could have happened, but what ifs or what ifs.
Alex, you're going to be even more pissed off, dude. He was drafted in the 7th, not the 6th.
It was the 7th? I thought it was the 6th. Oh, God.
Yeah. It was
When did the
229, dude.
Yeah.
229.
That's
so bad. The receiver group was interesting though, because after Dotson and Burks went, and then Watson went, and Pickens, I feel like after, I guess Sky Moore too, but I feel like there weren't many receivers taken in like the 3rd or 4th round.
No, not that I remember. But, yeah.
All right, we'll get to the next super chat question from Frank again. Appreciate Frank always supporting the show. Do you think Bosa and Mac will primarily be used on one side or moved around often? I know they have both primarily played from the same side. Tyler, what do you think here?
Good question, Frank. So looking at the past season, obviously Joey Bosa does play more as your left outside linebacker, left edge sort of guy. And Khalil Mack the same last year. But if I go back to his season in 2018 where he was with Brandon Staley, from the left side, he played about 340 snaps. And from the right side, he played about 400 snaps. So it actually was pretty even if you look at his one season with Brandon Staley. Now, does that change? I don't know. Point is, he was very balanced with Brandon Staley there. And I think there is, sure, they'll get shifted around. They'll move from side to side, whatever. But we at least see that Khalil Mack with Brandon Staley at one point wasn't just a one-side guy.
No, I think you'll definitely see them be moved around quite a bit. I think they'll take their chances. I feel like towards the back end of the season, Bosa and Nwosu were kind of moving around a little bit more often.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically getting annoyed against that would have been the Broncos when Garrett Bowles was out, when it was like Bosa never got to go against the replacement left tackle. So I don't know. I feel like there's kind of give and take there, but I do seem to remember him and Nwosu moving around pretty often against like the Chiefs and things like that down the stretch. So I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, next super chat from LA Chargers fan. I've been a big critic of Telesco, and we still don't know what is going to happen with this team. However, I appreciate him for taking a big swing. Any thoughts here, anyone?
Yeah, I've been a critic of Telesco. He did good this time, but we're probably still going to criticize him on stuff. So, I mean, that's how the job works. It's a result-based business.
Yeah. The big swing wasn't really a big swing. He's doing what he needs to do with an elite quarterback on a rookie deal.
That's true. So
I think he's doing his job. I mean, it remains to be seen how the draft picks are going to work out and whether the free agent signings are going to, play up to their expectation and give us value on their contract. But yeah, I thought he's done a good job of filling out depth, especially after the draft. And I think that roster's in probably the best state it's been in since like 2018.
Yeah, and
I think. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Oh no, I was just gonna add on to my point. Like, yes, he's building around Justin Herbert right now and like doing everything he's supposed to do. But I'm like, does that kind of make up for like the last 8-7 years of not building around Phillip Rivers when they could have? Like, yeah. I mean, that's also Telesco's performance as well. So I mean, I am happy that he's taking the big swing now, but he kind of didn't before.
Yeah, I think Tom Telesco took the biggest year 10 jump on the team which is pretty cool. But
Tom Telesco breakout season.
Breakout season for Tom. He broke a couple habits that we're used to, right? He traded for a big player, which was awesome. I think that the way that I've kind of internalized this and why the Kyle Van Noy signing to me was kind of where I let go of whatever's going to happen with right tackle is going to happen. I don't think I can't remember an offseason where we literally made moves across the board that I was just completely satisfied with and felt like the entire team was taken care of other than one position, like just one move that could be made. So if I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt at this point, I think this was the best season possible. And the Kyle Van Noy signing to me, what blew my mind about it was I felt like that was the kind of signing that a couple of years ago we would have made to fill a starting role. You know, a 31, 32-year-old linebacker coming in to play edge to fill in for a young guy that we let go that we didn't want to pay. And instead, it's a 32-year-old stud coming in to play rotational edge, leadership guy that's super versatile. Even Bryce Callahan. It's almost like, I know it's not apples to apples, but before I could have seen Bryce Callahan being somebody we signed akin to a Chris Harris, even though Chris Harris actually signed for more money and didn't have the health concerns. But it's very interesting feeling that way for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, we're in this state of the Chargers are getting some guys that are veterans that could be starters. I'm sure there might have been offers elsewhere, but they get those two guys after the draft. They're non-post draft cuts. They just found a way to get these guys, sign them, and for really cheap deals. Having Callahan be your CB5, 4 potentially, Van Noy your edge 3, like you said, this is probably what they have for starters in other seasons. It's here goes, Michael Schofield's definitely going to start this year at right guard. No, like we're going to go get Michael Schofield to be a backup. That's what they did last year, I guess, or then he ended up starting. But now they're just getting some guys who could legitimately start in pinch spots. Now they actually have legit depth for the first time in what feels like a long time. I feel like I'm always liking the depth of the team when I'm looking at the team before the season starts. But this year, I don't know, like the more they do and the more I see under this daily regime, the more I realize what was lacking in years prior. And so seeing this now, it's like, okay, this is actually really depth. Like Kyle Van Noy is really depth. Chris Rumpf is really depth here rather than just some guys that just get thrown out there. And, they're depth, but they're just all undrafted free agents. There's just such a smaller drop off from the starters to the depth guys now.
Yeah, that's the biggest change over the last 2 years for me is like, we've seen in previous years, you go get a Chris Harris, but then the backup for Chris Harris is this guy from the CFL who like nobody knows who he is, named Tavon Campbell, or, you go sign Russell Okung and Mike Pouncey, and their backups are these late round draft picks, undrafted free agents, and Trey Pipkins or Trent Scott, or I like Scott Quessenberry, but he's a 5th round draft pick. So I feel like that's kind of the big difference. Like I think the Tom Telesco old would have said, okay, we have Bosa, we have Mac, we drafted Chris Rumpf last year, he's edge 3 automatically, no questions asked. And it looked like that was going to be the case for a little bit there, but and then comes Kyle Van Noy. So I think that's really the biggest difference for me is how they have kind of filled in the gaps a little bit. And so, I made my gripes with Tom Telesco very clear previously. I wanted him fired with Anthony, and I wanted a clean sweep. But he and Brandon Staley seem to have a much better working relationship. It's a bigger collaboration, and I don't know what kind of led to that change or not, but the roster process has been significantly better over the last 2 years. And maybe that's just an effect of having a rookie quarterback on that cheap deal. I don't really know, but definitely something has changed with Tom Telesco. So we'll get to Tyler's dad's super chat here. Shout out to the Schoen family, always showing out in the super chats. He wants to know, how do the Chargers preserve the health of key players? He specifically mentions Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and Derwin James for the second half stretch of the season. I don't know if anyone has any particular thoughts here on this question.
Just do what the Rams do.
What's that? What's that, Arjun?
I don't know. Staley comes from the Rams. He must have some intel about their sports science staff. But that was just a broad one. But I think just managing their reps in practice. I mean, these guys are professionals. Bosa, Mack, and Derwin are all pro guys. So I don't think you really need to overwork them in practice. I think Derwin missed games because of the hamstring injury he suffered in practice, right? So can't have that anymore. So it is just getting players to the field as healthy as they can be.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, as much as we talk about sports science and all this stuff, like, I think that's part of it. And the Chargers were relatively healthier than they had been in years prior last season. But some of it's just luck, and you're kind of banking on Khalil Mack not having the injuries he did last year. You know, Joey Bosa does kind of have like a concussion history a little bit. So you're sort of just banking on the idea that he can stay healthy. Obviously, Derwin James with his knees. So I don't know if there's a way that you can preserve them other than, like if we have like this big lead in the fourth quarter, we pull them. Like you can't really do that like you do that in basketball, for example. There's not really a whole lot of ways to, I think, reduce their usage other than, I guess, get a little smarter about it at points. But yeah, I don't think there's really a way to preserve their health. It's just kind of luck of the draw at some points.
I think it'll be interesting too to see if we have more shootouts with how strong our division is like we did last year, or if this new shift in philosophy on defense is going, and prioritization of it is going to result in less plays being run because we are actually, containing and slowing down the pace of the game and stuff like that. Because if we do that, maybe, we're not having an 80 play Raider game. That was insane. That was on one side of the ball. So, I mean, that's a lot of snaps for, a defense to take. So that would be one thing we could do is try to slow the game down, give it to our guy Xander Horvath to crunch out those gritty yards and just get up there slowly and surely.
Yeah, and I mean, just also not having Rex Burkhead gash us for 700 yards as the season winds down. Like that would be a way to like preserve people for the second half stretch as well.
Well, now they get Dameon Pierce, so now it's not even going to be Rex Burkhead. So. No, I think also to that point, right? Like the Chargers offensive lineman had like 70 pass blocking reps against the Raiders. So that's always something that gets overlooked a little bit when talking about Storm Norton's performance against Max Crosby. It's like, well, I mean, the man was on an island the entire game. So, so this is something that I definitely wanted to talk about. And then we'll kind of, I guess we'll do Alex's breakfast burrito rankings or something like that to wrap up. NSN, am I too late for the obvious discussion of primary importance, namely who the fuck is 6'6" Ben Griffiths? So a bit of a surprise. The Chargers had a punter in for rookie mini camp. Daniel Popper seems to think that he'll be in training camp as well. Ben Griffiths out of USC, excuse me. I was about to say UCLA. And he's an Aussie punter. So he played, I think, 7 years in the Aussie League and then came over as like a 26-year-old college freshman to get onto USC's football team. I don't know if any of you guys have. I don't know. I haven't watched punter film. I've seen Ben Griffiths punt, obviously, as a Pac-12 fan. And the numbers look pretty good. They didn't punt a whole lot this past year, but he was PFF's 7th graded punter in the rookie class of 2022 and had the 2nd best hang time of any of the punters behind only Jordan Stout. So, again, there's not a ton of like number stats. He didn't get a ton of punts inside the 20, but his hang time is good. His PFF grade is good. Again, I don't watch any punter film, so I don't know if I can say about that. But Tom Telesco said that they would have some competition for J.K. Scott, and it looks like Ben Griffiths is that guy.
Sure. I mean, Bernard Raymond looked at him and said, "Jesus, you're old, dude." This guy is super, super old. Not old, but
I mean, he's a punter though. You're not asking him to be a franchise cornerstone at left tackle.
Can he play right tackle out of curiosity?
I mean, he's 6'6", 240, right? So
I mean, what's his arm like?
Let him gain 60 pounds.
Sure. If he kicks it further, more accurately, great. I don't know anything about him, unfortunately.
This guy's 30. He looks like 45.
Yeah.
So there's actually a Charger podcast out in Australia, guys. Thunder Down Under. And I was chatting with them about this guy, and Alistair is one of the hosts, and he said that basically the guy can kick it a mile. He confirmed that. He did struggle a little bit at rugby. Like wasn't the best player for player in the what was it, the AFL, I think it is. Yeah. But he said he could kick it a mile. The interesting thing, and Steven was pointing out that he had a good hang time. That might be an indication that he might transfer over pretty well because in the AFL they don't really prioritize hang time. It's about accuracy and how far you can kick it. So the fact that he already made that transfer, maybe that's a good sign for him, excelling. But it'll be interesting. I'd love to see that guy barreling down after a kick and laying somebody out, Pat McAfee style.
Yeah, the thing with the Aussie punters, because Utah loves the Aussie punters, man. Every single year we always have one. And the thing as it relates to like translate to the NFL is that, the rugby punters, they get that long wind up, right? They run for a little bit and then they kind of just wait for the punting team to get down the field and then they just kind of boot it as far as they can. Obviously you can't do that in the NFL. So the fact that he has good hang time, I think shows a lot. I'd be curious to see how this pans out. And apparently we have a new punter type, which is really tall. It's because J.K. Scott is also 6'6". So there's that.
How much does he weigh?
J.K. Scott is much lighter. I think Scott's only like 190. He's very skinny.
Get him in the weight room.
So there we go. We got our long snapper interview last night. Talk about a punter today. We talk about special teams on this podcast.
I didn't know who Ben Griffiths was before Steven said who Ben Griffiths was. So I don't have a whole lot of takes. All I remember about like old Australian punters is that there was that one crazy looking dude from the U a couple years ago who was like, I don't remember how old he was. Like they said he was 24, but he looked no less than like 40. I don't know. I think his name was like Lou Headley or something.
Yeah, the one that was like all super tatted up, right?
Oh yeah, and like he just he looked like a freak. But someone described their punter as your dad's scariest coworker. So I think old Australian punters they add character to the team.
Yeah. No, most of the Utah punters they had were kind of young guys, but they got an older one like in 2019 and he kind of sucked, so they went back to the young guns, I guess. I still expect J.K. Scott to win that position battle, but at least he has like actual competition now, because I know some people were kind of concerned about that, so we'll have to see how that one pans out, I guess. But we got 2 tall punters. Let's go.
Great. Can they throw? Can we go for it more on 4th down? Can we get the ball to Devon Campbell faster so he doesn't get blown up by Hunter Renfrow?
We could trade for Jordan Mailata still, and he can play punter.
Can he punt?
He played rugby too. He was in Australia, so now he can play punter.
Oh my gosh! Did you see that he went on that Masked Singer show?
No, I don't watch the Masked Singer.
Well, I don't watch it either, but he went. I saw it on Twitter, man. Dude's got some pipes. He's got some good good voice down there.
Mailata?
Yeah.
Oh, sounds good, I guess.
No, it was really so. Brooke watches that show, and the judges have to guess who the people are. And Jordan Mailata is a 6'8", 400-pound Australian man. Like, he's massive. And one of the judges guessed that he was Chris Webber, and I'm like, the hell? This man's thighs are huge, and you're gonna guess this skinny basketball player? Anyways,
why would Jordan Mailata go on the Masked Singer though? Like, no one knows who Jordan Mailata is except me.
No, like, because I know about the premise because Brooke watches it, like I said, and so when she was like, "This guy on the Eagles went on it," and I was like, "Who? Like Devontae Smith or Jalen Hurts?" And and she was like, "No, some lineman." I'm like, "Why would any lineman go on a show where you have to guess who they are?" But like Gronk has been on there. I think Antonio Brown was on there. Victor Oladipo actually almost won it the first season, so I guess he's got pipes too.
You know a lot more about the show than I fucking do.
Well, I told you
I don't watch it, but here's the stats. Yeah.
All right, so we got one more super chat, and then we'll head out for the day. And again, thanks to Kyle and Arjun for joining us today. He wants to know: is there any draft pick you would redo? And outside of Zion, are there any day one starters? So we'll start with Kyle and Arjun first, since they're the guests today.
You go ahead and start, Arjun. I'll come in right after you.
All right. Well, if you asked me right after the draft, I probably would have redone the JT Woods pick, and gone corner or edge. But I mean, if I had the knowledge that they were going to go after Callahan and Van Noy, I would have kept the JT Woods pick. So I'm going to just go with the obvious analytics pick. I wouldn't have done Isaiah Spiller in the 4th. They could have gotten, a running back in the 6th. So with the 4th round pick, Calvin Austin, I mean, I don't know if he was still on the board there, but like a receiver would have made sense in the 4th instead of a running back. But that's kind of just the analytics in me talking. And again, I've been pretty vocal about how I think he could just be like a more elusive clone of Larry Roundtree and Joshua Kelly, which is kind of disturbing. But I think otherwise they did a good job filling out the draft or filling out depth through the draft.
Yeah, Steven's gonna hate me. Sorry, Steven. But I am so stoked with Zion Johnson, and if we didn't draft down, he was by far the guy I wanted to get. But the only way, and it really boils down to, if they kick out Matt Filer to right tackle and we don't have a gaping hole there, I'm stoked. And I really can't ask for anything to have changed. But I would have, there is a part of me, if we do see Storm or Trey on that right tackle spot, then I will be left wishing we had traded out of the 1st round and gathered a plethora of day 2 and some early day 3 picks and be able to solidify getting like an Abraham Lucas, having a pick to get Leo Chanel. Like if you look at what we could have gotten if we traded down, Leo Chanel was there late. Abraham Lucas went later than we thought.
Bernard Raymond fell.
Everybody. I mean, so this year it worked out. And I'm very happy that they made the Van Noy, like Arjun was saying, and Callahan signings, because that's what you have to do if you're not trading down. You need to fill that depth somehow with talent. And just in future years, I hope that we start trading back, because I think it's going to be harder and harder to fill this depth out properly when we have a quarterback that's making 50 or 60 million a year. So
yeah, everybody was busting Dave Gettleman's balls last year when he had never traded down, and we're approaching that same kind of level with Tom Telesco in that regard, in terms of the obvious neglect of trading down. So obviously, I think he's a much better GM than Dave Gettleman was. But in terms of the picks, I think I've really come around on all of them outside of the 7th round picks. I don't see a way that Dean Leonard makes this roster, so I would have change that out, take a shot on some edge player or a receiver late, like Bo Melton or somebody like that. So Leonard is really like, okay, what's his role? He's probably a practice squad guy. So that's the one for me that I would redo and swap out for almost literally any other position.
Do you have to ask me which one I would redo? I don't know. I mean, I do kind of see when we're talking about like the 6th and 7th round guys, like who you would kind of change out of that group. To me, I don't think there's like enough there where I go, oh man, I wish we didn't draft Dean Leonard over this person. Like, I mean, yeah, you could say like Bo Melton for sure, but like the 4th round is like the Isaiah Spiller pick for me. Just what else they could have gone there. I think we've talked about it through the lens of, oh, well, they could have taken this running back in the 5th. They could have taken this running back in the 6th, but just the value that was on the board. I know I wasn't recording the show with Kyle, while that pick happened, but I was just kind of thinking, it's like, oh, well, just kind of running down the list of names. Calvin Austin's still on the board. You obviously talk about someone like Joshua Williams, who Steven interviewed, Romeo Dubs, kind of even Pierre Strong if they wanted to go that way. So for me, just in terms of value at other positions as well, 4th, 5th round, Zach Tom, Steven's guy, was kind of on the board, although they kind of made it up with Salier there. I probably would have redone the Isaiah Spiller pick.
But if they had taken Pierre Strong over Isaiah Spiller, I'd be pissed.
Okay, that one was pretty bad. But no, I mean, I just think, for me, wide receiver, corner, if they wanted to go another direction there and then take a running back later, that's probably what I would have done.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, it is the Dean Leonard pick. I'm just having a hard time seeing him making the roster at this point. And so in that regard, I guess you can say the same for any other outside corner or any other edge rusher, but probably would have preferred a Kalen Barnes. Even Rasheed Walker at that point in the 7th round was available.
Yeah.
And
the bike
listen,
thief.
I don't know why he fell, but him in the 7th round is completely fine with me.
Who did he end up going
Jesse
to?
The Packers.
He went the Packers. He's going to be
he's
all-pro.
going to be an all-pro.
Yeah,
Him
that's
and
fun.
Zach Tom, man.
Yeah, I think Jesse Luketa is the one I probably would have swapped out for. Dean Leonard. Obviously, they addressed edge later, but I would have liked someone like Luketa, who they did meet with, who can play the run, who was like a 2-time captain for Penn State. Like I think that's someone I would have invested a 7th round pick in over Dean Leonard.
Yeah, Original One points out, Kellen Deesh was also on the board. I mean, he was an undrafted player, but I would rather have him than Dean Leonard or Xander Horvath. I think at least Horvath, is going to make the roster, but I just have a hard time seeing Dean Leonard making this roster.
Envy Talent says that Kyle looks like John Krasinski. So he got Jake Gyllenhaal last time when I was on the show with him. And then when I asked who I looked like, people said that I looked like a douchebag, which was fair in the chat. But so now Kyle has gotten John Krasinski and Jake Gyllenhaal comps. So just wanted to point
Maybe he means John Krasinski is Arjun.
I don't think that's what he meant.
I'm joking.
Man, Kyle out here getting comps to like 2 of the best looking dudes in Hollywood, and I got Kyle Illinois, so it's all good.
Yeah, but he's rich.
Hey.
I got the thumbs from Spy Kids. So
I got literally called a douchebag on stream when I asked who I looked like. So
Didn't somebody say scum, dude, or like something?
yeah, someone also said
just scum.
So
It was just not nice, man.
Yeah.
Not nice stuff. Brutal.
If he says Michael Cera for Alex, yeah, I think that's fair.
I'd rather be called a douchebag at that point if you just stereotype me into that.
All right, guys. Well, this has been fun. We've been here for an hour and 12 minutes, so appreciate all you guys tuning in. Appreciate Kyle and Arjun for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow for our regularly scheduled Sunday episode. That's going to do it. We'll see